For 28 years, my parents made me feel worthless while treating my brother like royalty. The day I discovered I was adopted and they'd been hiding my birth mother's letters for decades, everything clicked. My reunion with my real family was perfect. Revenge against the people who never truly wanted me. My name is Emma, and I thought I knew what family meant until the day I discovered I'd been living a lie my entire life. I was 28 years old, working as a marketing manager in Chicago, engaged to the love of my life, Ryan, and planning our dream wedding for the following spring. My relationship with my parents had always been complicated, but I thought that was normal. My mother, Patricia, was a perfectionist who criticized everything I did, from my career choices to my appearance, to my choice in men. My father, Richard, was a successful lawyer who barely acknowledged my existence unless I was disappointing him in some way. They'd always favored my younger brother, Jake, who was 2 years younger than me and could do no wrong in their eyes. When Jake dropped out of college to pursue music, they called it following his passion. When I changed majors from pre-med to marketing, they called it giving up on my potential. When Jake moved back home at 26 after his band failed, they called it regrouping. When I moved out at 22 to start my career, they called it abandoning my family. I'd learned to live with their disapproval, to build my own life, despite their constant criticism. Ryan was supportive and loving, everything my parents had never been, and I was looking forward to starting a family with someone who would actually appreciate and encourage me. We'd been together for 3 years, and he'd proposed 6 months earlier in the most romantic way possible, during a weekend trip to Napa Valley that we'd saved up for months to afford. The first sign something was wrong came when we were planning our wedding. I'd always dreamed of a beautiful ceremony with my family there to celebrate with us, despite all our problems. But every conversation with my parents about the wedding turned into an argument. The venue wasn't good enough, the date was inconvenient, the guest list was too small, the menu was too expensive. Nothing I planned met their standards, and they made it clear they thought I was making a mistake marrying Ryan. "He's not ambitious enough for you, Emma," my mother would say. "You could do so much better if you just applied yourself." Ryan was a high school teacher who coached basketball on weekends. He didn't make a lot of money, but he was passionate about his work and incredible with kids. He wanted to make a difference in young people's lives, which I found admirable. But my parents saw his modest salary and called him a failure. The breaking point came 3 months before our wedding. Ryan and I had driven to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, something we did once a month to try to maintain some kind of relationship with them. The conversation quickly turned to the wedding, with my mother criticizing every detail we'd chosen. "The flowers are too simple, the venue is too casual, the dress is too plain," she went on and on. "This whole wedding screams low budget, Emma. What will our friends think?" "Our friends will think that 2 people who love each other are getting married," I said, trying to keep my temper. "That's what matters." "Love doesn't pay bills," my father chimed in. "Ryan will never be able to provide for you the way you deserve. You're settling, Emma, and it's painful to watch." Ryan squeezed my hand under the table, staying calm despite their attacks on his character and his livelihood. He was used to their criticism by now, but I could see it still hurt him. "Ryan provides plenty," I said firmly. "We have a good life together. We're happy." "Happy doesn't last," my mother said coldly. "Security does. Financial stability does. Ryan can't give you either of those things." That's when Jake spoke up from across the table. "Maybe Emma knows what she's doing, Mom. Maybe you should trust her judgment for once." I looked at my brother in surprise. Jake had never defended me before, never stood up to our parents on my behalf. We'd never been particularly close, but in that moment, I felt a surge of gratitude toward him. My parents turned their disapproval on Jake immediately. "Stay out of this, Jacob," my father said sharply. "This doesn't concern you." "Emma's my sister," Jake said. "Her happiness concerns me. You guys have been tearing her down her whole life, and I'm sick of watching it." The argument escalated quickly, with my parents accusing Jake of being disrespectful, and Jake accusing them of being emotionally abusive to me. Ryan and I tried to leave, but my father blocked our way to the door. "We're not done discussing this," he said. "Emma, you need to think seriously about whether this wedding is a mistake. We won't support a marriage that we know is doomed to fail." "Then don't support it," I said, finally reaching my breaking point. "Don't come to the wedding. Don't be part of my life if you can't accept the man I love and the choices I make. Don't be dramatic, Emma, my mother said dismissively. We're your parents. We know what's best for you. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. You don't know what's best for me. You never have. You've spent my entire life telling me I'm not good enough, that my choices are wrong, that I'm disappointing you. I'm done trying to earn approval I'm never going to get. We left that night with my parents shouting after us that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. The next day, Jake called me. Emma, I need to talk to you about something important, he said. Can you come over to my apartment? There's something about our family that you need to know. I met Jake that afternoon, and what he told me changed everything I thought I knew about my life. Emma, I don't know how to tell you this, he started, pacing around his small living room. I've been carrying this secret for 10 years and I can't do it anymore. Especially after last night watching them tear you down again. What secret, Jake? He took a deep breath. You're not our biological sister, Emma. You're adopted. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? I overheard Mom and Dad talking about it when I was 16, he said. They were arguing about whether to tell you before you went to college. Dad thought you should know, but Mom said it would just confuse you and make you feel like you didn't belong. I sat down heavily on his couch, trying to process what he was telling me. That's impossible. I have baby pictures, birth certificates, everything. The adoption was arranged privately when you were 3 days old, Jake said. Your birth mother was a teenager who couldn't keep you. Mom and Dad had been trying to have kids for years, and when they finally got pregnant with me 2 years later, they decided never to tell you about the adoption because they didn't want you to feel different. Everything suddenly made sense. Why I looked nothing like either of my parents. Why I'd always felt like an outsider in my own family. Why nothing I did was ever good enough for them. Why they treated Jake and me so differently. I wasn't their real daughter in their eyes. I was a placeholder until they could have a biological child. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I can't watch them destroy you anymore, Jake said. Because you deserve to know the truth, and because I found something else. He handed me a manila folder. Inside were documents that he'd secretly copied from our parents' files over the years. My original birth certificate with my birth mother's name, Angela Martinez. Adoption papers. Letters from Angela to my adoptive parents during the first few years of my life, asking about my welfare and expressing her love for me. She'd wanted to stay in touch, but my parents had cut off all communication when I turned 5. She tried to contact you on your 18th birthday, Jake said, showing me more documents. She wrote letters that Mom and Dad intercepted and never gave you. She wanted to meet you, to have a relationship with you, but they told her you weren't interested. I stared at the letters, written in a handwriting I didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. Angela had poured her heart out in these letters, talking about how much she missed me, how proud she was of my accomplishments that she'd learned about through the adoption agency, how much she hoped that someday we could meet. My parents had stolen these letters from me, had denied me the chance to know my birth mother, had let me grow up feeling unloved and unwanted when there was a woman out there who had never stopped thinking about me. There's more, Jake said quietly. I hired a private investigator last year. Angela still lives in Milwaukee, about 2 hours from here. She's married now, has 2 other kids, but she still asks the adoption agency about you every year on your birthday. She never stopped hoping you'd want to meet her. I spent the rest of that day reading through all the documents Jake had collected, learning about a part of my life that had been hidden from me for 28 years. Angela had been 17 when she had me, a senior in high school whose boyfriend had abandoned her when he found out she was pregnant. She'd made the difficult decision to place me for adoption because she wanted me to have opportunities she couldn't provide. But she'd never stopped loving me, never stopped hoping that someday we could have a relationship. That evening, I confronted my parents. I walked into their house without knocking, something I'd never done before, and found them in the living room watching television. We need to talk, I said, throwing the adoption papers on the coffee table in front of them. The color drained from both their faces. My father turned off the television while my mother just stared at the documents. "Where did you get these?" she asked finally. "Jake gave them to me," I said, "along with the letters from Angela that you've been hiding from me for years." "Emma, sit down," my father said. "Let us explain." "Explain what?" I demanded. "Explain how you've lied to me my entire life? Explain how you intercepted letters from my birth mother? Explain why you've treated me like a second-class citizen in my own family?" "We treated you exactly the same as Jake," my mother said defensively. "We raised you. We provided for you. We gave you everything you needed." "Everything except the truth," I said. "Everything except unconditional love. Everything except acceptance of who I am." "We love you, Emma," my father said. "The adoption doesn't change that." "Doesn't it?" I asked. "Because you've spent my entire life making me feel like I don't measure up, like I'm disappointing you, like I don't belong. Now I know why. I was never your real daughter in your eyes." "That's not true," my mother protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then why did you hide this from me?" I asked. "Why did you intercept Angela's letters? Why didn't you tell me that my birth mother wanted to meet me?" They exchanged glances, probably trying to decide how much of the truth to admit to. "We thought it would be confusing for you," my mother said finally. "We thought it would make you feel divided between two families. So you made the decision for me," I said. "You decided that I didn't deserve to know my own history, my own story. You decided that I didn't deserve to have a relationship with the woman who gave birth to me. We were protecting you," my father said. "We didn't want you to get hurt. If Angela decided she didn't want an ongoing relationship." "But that wasn't your choice to make," I shouted. "It was my life, my relationship, my decision. You stole that from me." The argument went on for over an hour, with my parents trying to justify their lies, and me demanding to know why I'd never been good enough for them to love unconditionally. Finally, my mother said something that revealed the truth they'd been hiding even from themselves. "We always worried that you would choose her over us if you knew about her," she admitted. "We were afraid that your real mother would be more important to you than we were." There it was. The real reason behind years of criticism and emotional distance. They'd been treating me badly because they were afraid I would abandon them if I knew the truth about my origins. They'd been punishing me for a choice they thought I might make, destroying our relationship to prevent me from leaving them for someone else. "You created the very thing you were afraid of," I told them. "You pushed me away with your criticism and your lies. You made me feel unwanted and unloved. Angela didn't destroy our relationship, you did." I left that night knowing that I would probably never have a normal relationship with the people who had raised me. They'd been too damaged by their own insecurities to love me the way a child deserves to be loved, and now it was too late to repair the damage they'd done. The next week, I called the number Jake had given me for Angela. She answered on the second ring, and when I told her who I was, she started crying. "Emma," she whispered. "Oh my God, Emma. I've been waiting for this call for 28 years. We talked for 3 hours that first conversation. Angela told me about her life, her family, her career as a nurse, her marriage to a wonderful man named Carlos who had always known about me and supported her desire to reconnect. She told me about my half-siblings, Maria, who was 15, and David, who was 13, who knew about their older sister and wanted to meet me. But most importantly, she told me about the day she'd made the decision to place me for adoption and how it had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. "I held you for 3 days in the hospital," she said through her tears. "I memorized every detail of your face, your tiny hands, the way you smiled in your sleep. I wanted to keep you so badly, but I was 17 years old with no money, no family support, no way to give you the life you deserved." "I understand," I told her. "You made an impossible choice because you loved me." "I've thought about you every single day since then," she said. "I've wondered what you looked like, what you were interested in, whether you were happy. The adoption agency would give me basic updates until you turned 18, but after that, nothing. I didn't even know if you knew you were adopted." "I didn't know until last week," I admitted. "My adoptive parents never told me." Angela was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry they kept us apart," she said finally. "But I'm so grateful you found me. I'm so grateful you wanted to talk to me." We arranged to meet the following weekend in Milwaukee. Ryan drove with me, holding my hand during the entire 2-hour drive while I alternated between excitement and terror. What if we didn't connect? What if she was disappointed in how I'd turned out? What if this reunion was a mistake? When I saw Angela waiting for me at the coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet, I recognized her immediately. I had her eyes, her smile, her nose. For the first time in my life, I was looking at someone who looked like me. She stood up when she saw me, tears streaming down her face, and we hugged for what felt like forever. "You're so beautiful," she whispered. "You're everything I hoped you would be." We spent the entire day together, talking about everything and nothing. Angela showed me pictures of Maria and David, my half-siblings who were excited to meet me. She told me about her nursing career, how she'd been inspired to help other young mothers after her experience with pregnancy and adoption. She introduced me to Carlos, who welcomed me with open arms and treated me like I'd always been part of their family. But the most healing part of the day was when Angela told me how proud she was of the woman I'd become. "You're smart, successful, engaged to a wonderful man who obviously adores you," she said. "You're kind and strong and everything I dreamed you would be when I placed you for adoption." For the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely accepted and appreciated by a parent figure. Angela didn't criticize my career, my appearance, my choice in men, or my life decisions. She celebrated everything about me, just as I was. Over the next few months, I developed a relationship with Angela and her family that was everything my relationship with my adoptive parents had never been. Maria and David were thrilled to have a big sister, and they welcomed me into their lives with an enthusiasm that was overwhelming and wonderful. Carlos treated me like his own daughter, including me in family gatherings and asking about my life, with genuine interest. Angela and I talked on the phone several times a week, and she flew to Chicago to help me with the final wedding preparations when my adoptive parents refused to participate. She cried when she saw me in my wedding dress, telling me I was the most beautiful bride she'd ever seen. She walked me down the aisle at my wedding, along with Ryan's father, while my adoptive parents watched from the guest section with disapproving faces. Angela gave a speech at the reception about how proud she was to be there for such an important day in her daughter's life, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the wedding, my relationship with Patricia and Richard continued to deteriorate. They were furious that I'd reconnected with Angela, jealous of the relationship we were building, and resentful that I'd chosen my real mother over them. They made snide comments about Angela whenever her name came up, criticized my decision to include her in my life, and tried to guilt me into limiting my contact with her. "After everything we've done for you," Patricia would say, "this is how you repay us? By running to some stranger who abandoned you as a baby?" She didn't abandon me, I would remind her. She made a loving decision to place me with people who could provide for me better than she could at 17. The difference is, she never stopped loving me or wanting what was best for me. The final break came when Ryan and I announced that we were expecting our first child. Angela was ecstatic, immediately asking about baby names and offering to help with the nursery. Patricia and Richard's first response was to criticize the timing, suggesting that we should have waited longer, saved more money, thought more carefully about the decision. "You're not ready for this responsibility," my mother said. "You're still figuring out your own life. How can you bring a child into this uncertainty?" "We're ready," I said firmly. "We've been married for a year, we're both employed, we own our own home. We're more prepared than most people." "Financial preparation isn't the same as emotional preparation," my father added. "You're still dealing with all this adoption drama. That's not a stable environment for a child." That's when I realized that they would never change. No matter what I accomplished, no matter how happy I was, no matter how well my life was going, they would always find something to criticize. They couldn't be happy for me because they were too invested in being right about their predictions of my failure. This adoption drama, as you call it, is me discovering my identity and building relationships with people who actually love and support me, I said. "If that threatens you, that says more about you than it does about me." I made the difficult decision to go no contact with Patricia and Richard. I blocked their phone numbers, stopped responding to their emails, and made it clear through Jake that they were not welcome in my life or my future children's lives unless they could learn to treat me with respect and kindness. It was painful, but it was also liberating. For the first time in my life, I was free from their constant criticism and disapproval. Jake supported my decision completely. He'd been watching them tear me down for years, and he understood why. I couldn't continue to expose myself and my family to their toxicity. He maintained a relationship with them, but he also made it clear that he wouldn't tolerate them bad-mouthing me or trying to use him as a messenger. My daughter, Sophia, was born 8 months later. Angela was there for the birth, holding my hand and crying when she saw her granddaughter for the first time. She helped during those first difficult weeks of new parenthood, cooking meals and holding the baby while I slept. She treated Sophia with the kind of unconditional love and delight that every grandchild deserves. Patricia and Richard sent a gift when Sophia was born, but they didn't ask to meet her. Through Jake, I learned that they were telling people I was being manipulated by my birth mother, that I was making a mistake by cutting them out of my life, that I would regret my decision someday. But I didn't regret it. Every day without their criticism and negativity was a gift. 2 years later, when Sophia was toddling around and saying her first words, I got an unexpected phone call from my father. "Emma," he said, his voice sounding older and more tired than I remembered. "I wanted to call and tell you that your mother is sick. She's been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, and the doctors say she has maybe 5 years left of cognitive function." I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Sadness for the woman who had raised me, even if she hadn't done it well. Relief that her criticism couldn't hurt me anymore. Guilt for feeling relieved about someone's illness. "I'm sorry to hear that, Richard," I said formally. "That must be very difficult for your family." "I was hoping," he continued, "that you might consider reconciling with us. Your mother keeps asking about you and Sophia. She doesn't understand why you don't visit anymore." "Does she understand why I stopped visiting?" I asked. "Has she taken responsibility for the way she treated me all those years? Has she apologized for lying to me about my adoption and intercepting my birth mother's letters?" There was a long silence. "She's sick, Emma. She's not the same person she was." "She wasn't a good person when she was healthy," I said. "I'm sorry she's ill, but her illness doesn't erase years of emotional abuse and manipulation." "She's still your mother," he said. "No," I replied. "She was my adoptive mother. My mother is Angela, the woman who gave birth to me, and who has loved me unconditionally since the day we reunited. The woman who celebrates my successes instead of tearing me down. The woman who treats my husband and daughter with kindness and respect." Richard tried to guilt me into visiting, into exposing my daughter to people who had never learned to love without conditions. But I held firm. I'd built a beautiful life with people who appreciated and supported me, and I wasn't going to jeopardize that for people who had spent decades making me feel worthless. Patricia passed away 3 years later. Jake called to tell me, and I felt sad, but not devastated. I'd grieved the loss of the mother I'd always wanted years earlier. Her death was just the final confirmation that we would never have the relationship I'd dreamed of as a child. I didn't attend the funeral, but I did send flowers with a card that said, "Thank you for raising me and giving me the opportunity to find my real family." Angela held me while I cried about the mother I'd never had, the relationship that had never been possible, the little girl inside me who had always hoped that someday Patricia would love her the way she loved Jake. Richard tried to maintain a relationship with me after Patricia's death, claiming that she had been the main source of the problems in our family. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and I wasn't interested in rebuilding a relationship based on his revisionist history of our family dynamics. Today, Sophia is 5 years old, and she has the kind of relationship with her grandmother Angela that I'd always dreamed of having with a parent. Angela reads to her, takes her on special adventures, teaches her Spanish songs, and makes her feel like the most precious child in the world. Sophia also has wonderful relationships with her Aunt Maria and Uncle David, who spoil her and include her in all the family activities. Carlos, who Sophia calls abuelo, taught her how to ride a bike and takes her fishing on weekends. Ryan and I have had 2 more children, twins named Michael and Elena, And Angela has been just as devoted to them. She retired from nursing early so she could spend more time with her grandchildren, and she lives close enough to babysit regularly. Our family dinners are filled with laughter, support, and genuine affection. Angela never misses a school play, a soccer game, or a birthday party. She celebrates every achievement, no matter how small, and provides comfort during every disappointment. Jake visits often with his new wife and their baby, and our children are growing up as close cousins who genuinely enjoy each other's company. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Patricia and Richard had told me about the adoption from the beginning, if they'd allowed me to maintain a relationship with Angela throughout my childhood. Would I have felt more secure in their love? Would they have been able to love me more freely if they hadn't been afraid of losing me? But I've learned not to dwell on what might have been. Instead, I focus on what is. A beautiful family built on honesty, acceptance, and unconditional love. A husband who cherishes me exactly as I am. Children who will grow up knowing they are wanted and valued. A mother who chose to love me from the moment I was born and never stopped, even when we were separated. The people who raised me gave me life, education, and opportunities, and I'm grateful for those gifts. But the people who truly became my family gave me something much more precious: the knowledge that I am worthy of love, just as I am. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to have. Sometimes you have to go out and find the people who will love you the way you deserve to be loved. And sometimes the most painful rejection leads to the most beautiful acceptance. Angela didn't just give me life twice, once when she carried me and once when she welcomed me back. She gave me the gift of knowing what unconditional love feels like, what it means to be celebrated rather than tolerated, what it's like to have a parent who is proud of you just for being yourself. That gift changed everything about how I see myself, how I love my own children, and how I move through the world. I am no longer the unwanted daughter trying desperately to earn love that will never come. I am the cherished child of a woman who sacrificed everything to give me a better life and who welcomes me back with open arms when I finally found my way home to her.